Starting this month, we'll each manage our own money. I am sick of supporting you. Sign the paper now or leave with nothing. You don't contribute a single dollar.
You think you're powerful because you hold a title, but you have no idea who actually owns this company. You cut me off financially just to humiliate me, but you have signed away your own entire corporate empire.
You can't do this! I gave my life to this company!
The glass boardroom on the 42nd floor was completely silent, except for the quiet, condescending tap of his platinum pen against the mahogany table. He didn't even look up at me as he slid the laminated document across the polished surface. Every executive present stared at their laps, refusing to make eye contact with me. Starting this month, we will each manage our own money, he announced, his voice dripping with smooth, practiced arrogance. I'm sick of supporting you, writing checks for your boutique hobbies and funding a lifestyle you haven't earned. He smiled, a sharp, cruel twist of his lips that was meant to crush whatever dignity he thought I had left. The board members offered nervous, polite chuckles, eager to stay on the good side of the newly appointed chief executive officer. I looked down at the paper. It was a formal separation of assets, drafted by his private legal team, completely stripping me of access to the joint accounts we had held for 5 years. He expected tears. He expected a scene. He expected me to beg him not to do this in front of his peers. Instead, I picked up the pen, signed my name in clean, deliberate cursive, and slid it back. I happily agreed, I said softly, meeting his gaze without flinching. He blinked, slightly thrown off by my composure, but quickly recovered his smug expression. Good, he sneered. Glad we're on the same page. Now if you'll excuse us, we have real business to discuss. He had no idea what was coming. To understand how a man could stand in a room full of corporate directors and humiliate his own wife, you have to understand who he thought I was. 3 years earlier, he married me believing I was just a quiet, unassuming former accountant who retired early to pursue artisanal pottery and digital design from our quiet home office. To him, I was a charming trophy, a soft, agreeable presence who kept his house spotless, organized his social calendar, and quietly handled the household logistics while he climbed the ladder at Vance Capital Holdings. He was powerful, handsome, and utterly consumed by his own ambition. As his title grew, so did his cruelty. It started small, dismissive comments about my income, subtle jabs at family dinners about who really paid the bills, and constant gaslighting whenever I raised questions about our joint investments. You don't understand high finance, he would say with a dismissive wave of his hand whenever I asked about the offshore restructuring files sitting on his desk. Just stick to your little crafts and let the adults handle the real money. I never argued, I never raised my voice. I simply listened, observed, and kept my head down. Because nobody in that room knew the truth. They saw a helpless spouse living off a wealthy husband's salary. What they didn't know was that long before I ever met him, I was the anonymous lead auditor behind Vanguard Equity, a private venture group that silently acquired majority control in distressed asset firms across the country. I didn't need his money. I had never needed his money. My personal portfolio was managed through a trust that operated entirely out of the public eye. When we got married, I chose to live simply. I wanted a real partner, not a transactional arrangement. But as his arrogance transformed into outright abuse, I realized I wasn't married to a partner. I was sleeping next to a predator who viewed my humility as weakness. That was his first mistake. For the next 2 months, he paraded his newfound financial independence like a trophy. He bought a luxury sports car, signed up for an elite country club membership, and publicly bragged to our mutual friends that he had finally cut off the dead weight. He left the household bills on the kitchen counter, demanding I pay exactly half down to the cent, assuming the pressure would force me to come crawling back, pleading for an allowance. Every month I quietly paid my half. I didn't complain, I didn't ask for a dime. Instead, I spent my evenings in my home office, analyzing the financial records he so carelessly left accessible on his unsecured laptop. Remember that detail, it matters later. As the weeks went on, his arrogance grew into reckless overconfidence. He began taking massive personal lines of credit, using his projected annual performance bonuses as collateral. He was convinced he was untouchable. He assumed that because he held the title of CEO, he owned the company. He had no idea who actually held the voting stock. The point of no return came on a Tuesday night. We were hosting a private dinner party for the firm's top investors at our home. In front of 12 high-net-worth clients, he made a grand toast to his own brilliant management. Then, looking directly at me as I served the main course, he laughed. "Of course, success requires discipline," he said loudly, raising his glass. "You have to know when to cut bad investments loose, whether in the market or in your own living room." The table went dead silent. A few guests looked away, visibly uncomfortable. He grinned, waiting for me to break, waiting for the humiliation to drag me under. I set the serving tray down, smiled warmly at the guests, and wiped my hands with a linen napkin. "You're absolutely right," I said quietly. "Discipline is everything." I walked out of the dining room, went up to my office, and placed a single phone call to the chairman of the board. The trap was officially set. The following Monday morning, an emergency board meeting was called at the headquarters. My husband walked into the glass boardroom wearing a tailored $1,000 suit, expecting to finalize his massive end-of-year executive payout. He was strutting, tossing his keys onto the table, completely unaware of the storm waiting for him. When he looked toward the head of the table, his smile instantly vanished. Sitting in the chair usually reserved for the primary institutional investor was me. "What is this joke?" he snapped, his face flushing red as he looked around the room. "What is she doing here? Security, remove this woman immediately." Nobody moved. The security guards standing by the door kept their hands folded, staring straight ahead. "Sit down," the chairman said, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "I won't sit down," my husband shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "She has no right to be in a closed-door executive session. She's my wife, she's an unemployed dependent." "She isn't an unemployed dependent," I said, my voice calm, steady and echoing clearly across the silent room. "And as of 8 o'clock this morning, I am no longer your wife. You were served with divorce papers at your vehicle 20 minutes ago." He let out a sharp, hysterical laugh. "You want a divorce? Great, you won't get a single penny of my money, I made sure of that." I pulled a crisp black folder from my leather briefcase and opened it. "I don't want your money," I replied softly. "I'm here to manage mine." I slid a set of verified corporate documents to the board members. For the past 3 years, Vanguard Equity has held a 62% controlling interest in Vance Capital Holdings, I explained, looking him directly in the eyes. "I am the sole founder and managing partner of Vanguard Equity, which means, effectively, I am your boss." The color drained from his face so fast he looked as if he might faint. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles turning white. Dropped pens rattled against the wood. Gasps broke out among the junior directors. That's impossible," he stammered, his arrogant posture instantly collapsing. You do crafts, you don't have this kind of money." "You assumed I was weak because I was quiet," I said smoothly. "You assumed I had nothing because I didn't need to show off, but remember when you said we should each manage our own money." I stood up, resting my hands lightly on the table. "When you forced me to sign that separation agreement, you legally severed any spousal claim you had to my private assets, including my controlling stake in this company. But more importantly, your private financial audit was completed last night." I gestured to the head of corporate compliance standing in the corner. "Over the past 6 months, in an effort to maintain your lavish personal lifestyle and pay off your personal credit lines, you illegally diverted nearly $2 million from the firm's client reserve accounts into offshore personal holdings. You thought nobody was auditing those files, but you left the digital signatures wide open on your home network." His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His skin turned an ash-grey color, his confident demeanor completely shattered in a matter of seconds. "The board has just voted unanimously," I continued, my voice entirely free of anger, carrying only absolute authority. "You are stripped of your title effective immediately. Your personal assets have been frozen pending a federal criminal investigation, and security will now escort you off the premises." 2 officers stepped forward, grabbing him by the arms as he began to tremble. "Please," he whispered, his voice cracking, eyes wide with terror as he looked at me. "Honey, please, we can talk about this, we're family." "Starting this month," I said, repeating his exact words back to him with a cool, polite smile, "we will each manage our own money." The fallout was absolute. Within 48 hours, the news of his fraudulent transfers hit the financial press. His country club membership was revoked, his luxury vehicles were repossessed, and his personal accounts were completely drained by legal fees and restitution demands. 3 months later, he accepted a plea bargain that included a mandatory 4-year prison sentence and total bankruptcy. He lost his career, his status, his freedom, and every single dollar he had ever used to posture his superiority. As for me, I took over active direction of the firm, steering it into its most profitable quarter in company history. I moved into a peaceful seaside home, far away from the shallow noise of his world, enjoying the absolute quiet that comes with true independence. He thought he was stripping me of my safety net. In reality, he just cut the rope holding back his own destruction.